Hello, something guys and gals. This is Lance here. It's been quite a while since I've just rambled occasionally, or even rambled at all, or submitted videos. I've been pretty busy with school and work, and well, trying to get new cars. And this fucking snowy weather out. You can't really see it right now because of this whole dark crevice I'm in. Well, anyway, I'm pretty sure many of you know that I'm an atheist. Or at least that's what I've concluded that I am to be, from just how I see the world in perspective with everything else. That the idea that a God could have existed is sorry about that. Could be impossible. But I've been watching a lot of well, not exactly watching, kind of just listening as I'm playing video games, because it's kind of it gets a little boring for me to just have to watch another person face to face. And I'm pretty sure the many of you who who watch me probably aren't like trying to look at me and try to listen to how I move with my mouth or something like that. But anyway, I've been watching these guys, and I since I'm an atheist, I try to listen to the points that atheists have to counter maneuver the theories of God existing. And in further reading it, I always seem to come across the scientific method, the whole scientific method of hypothesis and theories, because it's a really good example of how God just doesn't seem to make sense. Because Christians love to just put God as the answer for anything else that atheists or scientists just haven't been able to explain yet. Like any small little hole in either logic or something that can't be explained, like why hot water cools down and freezes faster than cold water, like that, for example, the Penumbra effect or something like that. They always throw in that God is doing that God only has power in places where we have not explained how these powers work, which is silly. So if those of you who don't have a middle school education, the scientific method is a method where you make a hypothesis about something, and then you make the study. You study to see if the hypothesis can hold up to its effect. So I remember a science experiment where I had to use the scientific method. It was about which material of cup could keep an 8-ounce hot water warm for the longest amount of time. So I had styrofoam, ceramic, plastic, metal, and I forgot what the other one was, or I think that was probably it. And what I came to realize, well, the hypothesis, the immediate conclusion that I made was that from common sense and from looking around my world objectively, I thought styrofoam would be the one that would be the warmest, the cup that would have the cup that would keep the material warm. And it turns out it was right. But the problem is that it didn't keep it warm for long. It stayed at a high temperature, but it dropped significantly. Now metal, it was the lowest, but it kept that temperature at the most stable. It didn't drop significantly, despite it being the coldest of all the other materials. So I pretty much concluded that yes, styrofoam can keep your water warm, but it won't keep it warm for long. You could probably prefer doing metal if you're fine with it being a little bit cooler, but can stay cooler for longer. Now, let's put God into this example. So I want to ask the question, does God exist? And the hypothesis, let's say the hypothesis is that, God does exist in some objective manner. He has made a universal presence that has been in recording and is accurate and does not have any sort of flaws whatsoever. That everyone can taste him. And I'm not saying that one fucking person can just say they had an experience with God, because that's just one person. They could be just talking straight out of their ass and just doing it for publicity. And most of the time that's true. They just do it for publicity because they just want to be on the airwaves. They make up the whole thing where, God talked to them in their sleep. It's like, oh yeah, now I gotta believe in God because one fucking person from somewhere 4,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean experienced Jesus. I mean, like, an experience that, like, enough people can validate and vouch for the presumption that God does exist. Like tonight, if tonight, like, everyone in Los Angeles saw the same God at the same time, then I would probably consider that, yeah, maybe, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get every, like, person in the city of Los Angeles to think and validate the same assumption that they saw a God. That's a significant number. I mean, even for just one city in one state, that's quite significant and could possibly change my mind. But there still has to be a lot more for me to be fully convinced. It may make me reconsider, but it won't make me convinced. Now, for the scientific method, you have to make study. You have to study. You have to be objective about how God can possibly have existed in any time. You look around you. You see the world as it is. Does it look like the world got flooded at one point? Like the geography that we live in could possibly, in any point of time, could have flooded the whole entire world? No. There is no possible way. Even if all the polar ice caps were to melt right now, the sea level would only rise about 78 feet. Most of Louisiana would be gone. A lot of the, like, shores on Florida would be gone. Parts of Lincoln City and Oregon, from what I can recall, would probably be gone too. But the whole entire world wouldn't be flooded. There'd still be a significant amount of the world that would be unaffected by that, by the overall sea level rise. It wouldn't be like fucking Waterworld, where, like, there's only a small part of the world that hasn't, like, gone under the whole submerging of the water. So, there. One strike. Second, God makes intelligent creations. Like, he's an intelligent designer. That's also wrong. For example, my fucking penis. It is exposed. It is out there. It can, like, if you see it, all you have to do is look on one fucking YouTube video of a bunch of fucking teen frat boys punching each other in the nuts, and you can already tell that God wouldn't make a design that would make us so weak and fragile to make such sensitive parts. Because if he was an intelligent designer, he would have made us into something that could not be killed. That would be, that despite us being, like, mortal, supposedly some fucking woman ate an apple and, we lost our immortality, that he would make something still that would make us insensitive. And secondly, why would God even make the tree to begin with? Why would he make the tree and make it strictly off bounds to them, and then decide that he should create them with this sort of curiosity to take the fruit from the tree anyway? Doesn't that sound extremely selfish? Like, you fucking make these human beings with curiosity, and then you put a tree and you're like, oh, don't eat from the tree. Oh, don't eat it. Strike 2. Strike 3. There are diseases. There are fucking diseases killing millions upon millions of people in Africa and all across the fucking world. You think God would make something like that? You think he's thinking to himself, wow, E. coli sounds like a great idea to create. There. Strike two. Strike two. There was no known flood. There cannot be a possibility for a flood to exist. And God does not create intelligent design. Or doesn't even create design. Now, strike three. And this is kind of a popular one that the Bible exists. Yeah, of course the Bible exists, but that doesn't mean your religion exists. That's the extension of how you prescribe your religion. That is not the same as it being made by the God. And it wasn't made by a God, because it was made by some desert folk back 2,000 years ago, making... They were just doing it mainly for symbolism and whatnot. You can't just look at a Bible and say... You can't just look... Like, if I was to look at... Like, if I was to take a Catcher in the Rye and say, well, because that book exists, the events there actually fucking occurred. No, that's not fucking true. That's the same fucking example, because when I look at the Bible, I think of it as a fucking fairy tale book. A fairy tale full of unicorns and giants and, Adam and Eve eating apple from a tree that God clearly made for them not to touch it, but give them curiosity to anyway, and whatnot. So, strike three. Now, there's a lot of evidence to disprove that God could exist, but for some reason, a lot of Christians still believe, still come to the conclusion that their God still exists. And that somehow the fact that God doesn't exist is a problem to them. Like it's such a problem that, we have, we have no moral fiber anymore. Well, we have consciences, and I don't know, I like to think that we might have some sort of moral ambiguity somehow. That we can make these decisions based on how we perceive the world as it is. I mean, people's consciences are different, because if everyone had a known conscience, then crime probably wouldn't happen. So there has to be a ground for morals. But I don't think morals just suddenly disappear because a religion doesn't exist, that their God does not exist. What's the problem with that? I'm not particularly sure what's the problem with that. When the hell did atheism ever cause wars? When did it ever kill thousands upon thousands of people for the sake of their faith? When did atheism ever blindly make people believe that because we do not have the answers we cannot find evidence for something, it automatically has to be the solution. That, well, because we do not know that how the universe was created, it must have been God. But it just complicates the issues. So, if you're to use the scientific method, and I know that Christians are probably looking at me and saying, oh, well, it's scientific method, it's all atheist shit, but you know what? Shush. If you use the scientific method for your God, you're going to find out that he can't possibly exist. He can't exist in the events that occurred. He can't exist in the idea that he's a great creator. If he makes things that fracture the human race and all of life overall, and he can't exist prospectively from a book that isn't really even made by him. That it's just a pamphlet. It's a brochure for his religion. It's not something he brought down to them to guide them the way. Because most of the time when these conservatives always say that you're gonna go to hell for the pornography, that's not from the opinions of God. That was just some opinions from them. So just think about that. All right. Just think. Okay.